It's your man Alex, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys my take on a Ronaldo crew cut self haircut. So let's get right into it. So to get started with today's self haircut, I'm going to be using my Babyliss trimmers with a T-blade to put in the first guideline. Now the first guideline is of course a bald guideline, so we're going to be balding it out the same exact way that Ronaldo likes to give his fades. He also likes to do skin fades, so we're going to be using the foil shavers as well to bald out the bottom section of my head to make it baby smooth, just like Ronaldo does in the vast majority of his haircuts. So the key when you're putting in the bald line is to really make sure you're staying patient and focused, because any sudden movements could really just mess up the entire self haircut. So take your time, be patient, make sure you're breathing, make sure there's air flowing in the room, right? Don't make sure you have solid light so you can see everything appropriately, and just make sure you're following along with the mirrors and just taking your time adjusting them as you go. So now I'm going in with my double foil shavers from Babyliss to bald out the bottom section of my head. Now I want you guys to recognize what I'm doing here with the technique. I'm going up and I'm just flicking out as I get closer toward the guideline. So I'm leaving about ½ an inch for a guideline, but I'm also flicking out at the same exact time so that I don't put in a hard line by accident, and then it just makes the fading process really difficult. So in order to save on the steps that I take for my haircut, I like to flick out just about ½ an inch underneath that hard line so I don't accidentally create a new hard line. If you get what I'm saying, right? I'm creating the gradients and I'm just alleviating the amount of steps that I have to take throughout the self haircut. And then I'm also just running the foil shavers back and forth throughout the back of my head to make sure that everything is even and nice and smooth. So for the second guideline, I'm going to be using the no guard lever open, and I'm going to be going up about 3/4 to 1 whole inch from that first guideline. So I'm doing my absolute best to follow the same exact curvature all the way around my head, following that 3/4 to 1 inch. All right, you don't want the back to be bigger or shorter than the guideline on the sides, so make sure you're just taking your time again, being patient, and making sure that the guidelines, the lines themselves, are actually nice and even all the way around, and one is not higher than the other side. So now I'm going in with the number 1 guard lever open. Notice how each guideline that I'm putting in with the guards is with the lever open. And I'm also going up 3/4 to 1 inch. So if you want to have a congruent fade and you want your fade to look even, you have to make sure that the guidelines are all the same. So every single guideline that I'm putting into my head is a 3/4 to 1 inch guideline. So about a finger's width in terms of distance. So for each guideline, the distance is about 3/4 to 1 inch, and that's really going to help you with the gradients of the fade so that it's not going to go from light to dark and have like unevenness and throughout the fade. So now I'm going in with the number 2 guard lever open, and I'm also going up 3/4 to 1 inch, but here, because I'm going really close to the part line, I'm actually flicking up and away at kind of like a 90-degree angle, and whatever hair falls into the clippers is what's getting cut. I'm not trying to curve the clippers into the curvature of my head. I'm actually just trying to flick and cut straight up at a 90-degree angle to keep a more boxed off look. So now to go in and fade out the hardest of the hard lines, which is the bald line, I'm going to be doing a 3-step process to remove this hard line. So the first step out of the 3 steps is using the no guard lever halfway, and using this guard is going to soften that hard line by about 50%. So you really want to take that extra initiative to soften the hard line first, and that just creates a little bit more of that gradients, right? It's going above and beyond for your fade. And then you can go in afterwards with the no guard lever closed, and then start from underneath where the hard line is, flick up and then away and flick out at the same exact time. And you can also of course use your opposite hand to pull your scalp upward, which stretches out the skin, which actually makes the guideline a little bit larger, so it elongates the guideline. So when you stretch out the skin, it makes the area a little bit longer and easier to actually fade. So that's why you see me do that quite often. So using the no guard lever closed should get rid of the hard line by about 90%, give or take. And then of course, the best way to remove any hard line is to use the same guard and lever position that you put in the hard line in the first place. So in this case, I used the trimmer for the first guideline, and I'm using the trimmer again to fully remove that hard line. So what I'm doing is just using my hand, stretching the skin and flicking out from underneath, going up a little bit, hitting the hard line, and then flicking away completely. So I'm using the full blade, the entire T-blade, I'm flicking away, going at the guideline, and I'm also using the corners as well in certain spots that I feel like the full blade isn't really going to help. So to summarize, removing the first hard line, I use the no guard lever halfway, no guard lever closed, and then the trimmer to completely get rid of it. It is a 3-step process to remove that first hard line. Now I'm going in with the half guard lever closed, and this should get rid of the entirety of that middle hard line right there. Now of course you can also adjust the lever, let's say lever halfway, lever open, to blend it in a little bit better as you go up that guideline. But for me, because the Babyliss clippers are really good because they're super duper expensive. These clippers are very sharp and very powerful. So I feel like going in with just the half guard lever closed typically does a good job. And again, any detail work that I have to add to the fade, I usually do at the end of the self haircut anyway, using my thinning shears. So now to fade in the final hard line, I'm going to be using the 1.5 guard lever closed. And this again should remove the entirety of that hard line. If for some reason it doesn't, you can always go back to the number 1 guard lever open, which if you can remember was also one of the guidelines that we used. So you can go back to the number 1 guard lever open if for some reason the 1.5 guard lever closed isn't getting rid of that hard line completely. You can just go back to it, and of course that should help get rid of majority of that hard line. Now what I like to do for the detailing is use what I've coined the reverse thinning shear method. So I basically take my thinning shears and I hold them in reverse, and I pinpoint directly on the fade any spots that are bulky or any spots that I still see a hard line, and I cut directly at those bulky areas and where the hard line is still at. So this is honestly one of the best methods that I found to really clean up the fade when you're finished fading in the hair with all the clipper guards. So it's such a game-changing technique. Highly recommend you guys use it. Now also I'm going in with the thinning shears over comb, and because I'm not going to be cutting too much length off the top, I'm just blending in that hair by my part line by the top of the fade into that longer length, so we have a more seamless transition from the shorter length on the sides and back into that longer length on top, which if I were to make a guesstimate, it's probably at around 1.5 inches in length on top, which is still a pretty decent size, just long enough to still be called a crew cut. So now to go in with my hair cutting scissors, I'm going to be detailing the top of my head as well. So I'm not going to be doing anything significant. I'm not going to be cutting a lot of hair off or wetting my hair. What I'm really trying to do is just make sure that everything is evened out. So I don't want like little, hills and one side's taller than the other, one side's a little bit more bulky than the other side. So really all I'm doing is just taking sections from one corner to the other side, and then just slowly going forward to the fringe, and I'm just evening everything out, cutting horizontal sections. The previous self haircut I did a textured self haircut, so there's a lot of hairs that are longer than what they would normally be. So in order to even all that out and make the haircut look nice, I have to go in and cut horizontally now, and this should just straighten everything out to make the haircut look a lot better. Now to make the self haircut extra crispy clean, you have to go in and give yourself a clean lineup. So what I like to use is my smaller set of scissors to cut off all of the baby hairs by my forehead. It's a lot safer than using the actual trimmers. And then I like to use the trimmers for the vertical bars by my forehead, and then of course the C cup going around my eyebrows. Now, it wouldn't be a true Ronaldo haircut without the perfect finish, and that starts with the right product. For this self haircut, I'm using Organic Clay by Kouras, a company I founded with one goal in mind: creating hair products that actually keep your hair healthy. Organic Clay is packed with incredible benefits. It promotes hair growth, helps slow down hair loss and graying, deeply moisturizes, and still gives you an all-day high hold with a clean matte finish. This is my take on a Ronaldo-inspired crew cut self haircut. Let me know in the comments below how you think the haircut turned out and what other hairstyles you'd like me to try out next. But make sure you leave a like, subscribe, check out Organic Clay by Kouras, and watch this video if you want to take your self haircuts to the next level.